Do you really want to know why they're trying to knock you down at work? Because you represent something they fear, clarity, and those who see too much bother them. You're not imagining things. And no, this is not a conspiracy theory. There's a game going on all around you. You just haven't been given the rules. And while you try to play fair, there are people who are already 2 houses ahead, playing dirty. You enter a company thinking that if you work well, everything will work out. But the real game isn't in the performance, it's behind the scenes. And that's where it gets dangerous. You know that person who says good morning, participates in happy hours, sends emojis smiling in the chat, but behind the scenes, are you planting doubts about your competence for the entire team? This is not paranoia. This is what they call corporate sabotage. And sabotage in the professional environment does not come with a warning. She doesn't scream, she whispers. It happens between the lines, in meetings without invitations, in hallway conversations, in emails copied unintentionally. Sometimes you start to notice that your name is losing strength. Its results are starting to disappear from the radar. And suddenly, someone comes up with an idea that you casually mentioned weeks ago. Coincidence? Not always. The truth is uncomfortable. There are people in your work who would rather destroy what threatens their ego than build something together. They don't sabotage you because you're making mistakes. They do it because you're getting it right, because you have potential, you have delivery, you have presence. And that, in a competitive and poorly managed environment, turns you into a target. And what hurts the most is that no one warns you. Nobody says, watch out for that person. Because in this kind of environment, loyalty is fragile and silence is part of the game. This video is for you who have felt that something was wrong, but had no proof. For you who work and double, but are treated as invisible. Who lives on alert because he feels that someone is pulling threads behind the cloth, and you can only see the shadow of what is being plotted. Here, I won't give you ready-made phrases or magic formulas. I'm going to show you the shocking truth behind sabotage at work, a truth that almost no one has the courage to expose. If you're waiting for tips on how to be more positive or keep your head up, this video might not be for you. But if you want to understand how to spot saboteurs before they ruin your reputation and how to protect yourself without becoming like them, here's here. Because when you understand what's at stake, you stop being a piece and starts playing. And what perhaps scares you the most, it's not the screams, the scandals, or the direct confrontations that hurt the most in the workplace. What really destroys, it is silence. The silence of meetings where you should be and were not called. The silence of the boss who begins to answer you with millimetric coldness. The silence of those glances exchanged when you enter the room. Silences that say nothing, but say everything. Want to know what's the most dangerous sign that you're being sabotaged? When they start to erase you. Not with an eraser, with strategy, and always in such a subtle way that, if you point it out, you will seem fragile, sensitive, or even paranoid. Real sabotage in companies is rarely explicit. It disguises itself as a formality of process, from we forgot to copy you in the email, from we changed the meeting at the last minute, from we don't think it's necessary to involve you in this part of the project. Everything seems justifiable, everything seems professional, until you realize that little by little, your name is disappearing from relevant conversations. That's the move, excluding you from the game without you noticing. And before you know it, they've put another player in your place, someone more manipulable, more aligned with internal politics, more convenient. And this erasure is accompanied by something even worse, the silent erosion of his image. Do you know that colleague who always seems so nice, helpful, polite? He starts to let go of small worries about you. Subtle things like, I think so-and-so is overloaded. Maybe that's why he got lost in this delivery. Or, he's good, but sometimes he doesn't collaborate as much with the team. Barnacle. It is not a direct accusation. It is a seed. of doubt planted with care. And these seeds over time become a forest. By the time you realize it, there's already a strange mood around you. You become the name that no one mentions enthusiastically, the colleague that others don't really know what's going on, but they think it's strange. This is not drama, this is tactics. It's office politics at its coolest and most meticulous. And here comes the hardest blow, credit theft. You deliver, you think, you solve it. But when the applause, someone comes forward and says, "We thought of this last week," or "The team worked this out together," and you stand there with your hand in your pockets, your heart tight, and the scream stuck in your throat, because you know that fighting for recognition will make you seem selfish. So you shut up. And when you shut up, you validate. They steal, you swallow it. They protrude, you disappear. It is no wonder that the psychological wear and tear in corporate environments is so high. You spend hours, days, months investing energy, creativity, talent, and all of this is used by someone who doesn't want to grow with you, wants to grow in your place. And before you say that this is an exaggeration, that maybe it's just an isolated case, let me tell you what happened to a subscriber to the channel. She texted me in a choked voice, almost crying, saying, "There's a guy on my team who's super nice to me. He always makes jokes, talks to me on Slack, even helps me with some spreadsheets. But I found out that he is sending direct emails to our boss, saying that I don't deliver anything, that I disrupt the flow. And you know what's worse? He said that I have a lot to add to the company, which sees me staying there for many years. Now I see that it is cynical. I don't know what to do. If I speak, they will think I'm jealous or wanting to show off. This happens all the time. People who pretend to be on your team, but are using you as a ladder. People who only treat you well because they still need you, until the day they don't need you anymore. Have you ever been through something like this? Have you ever had the feeling that you are being prepared for a fall and you are the only one who was not warned? Because that's exactly what they do. They set up the narrative before they knock you down. They build a character around you, an inattentive character, difficult to deal with, unreliable, and they do it calmly, with smiles, with informal conversations in the cafe. When the time comes for the decision, a promotion, a change of sector, or even a dismissal, everything is already justified, because they've spent weeks shaping others' perception of you. And perhaps worst of all, no one will stand up for you, because the work environment, when toxic, teaches one thing: protecting yourself comes before protecting the other. So even if someone sees, perceives, suspects, he will be silent, because intervening is risky, and in the end, those who talk a lot become the next target. This creates a brutal survival scenario, disguised as collaboration, a place where teamwork becomes the stage for selfish strategies, where feedback is a weapon and where vulnerability is weakness. And sabotage is not just about what they take from you, it's about what they make you feel. It makes you doubt yourself. You start reviewing everything you've done, trying to find faults. He starts working harder, trying to prove his worth. And ironically, the more you try, the more desperate you seem to be. And that's used against you. Yes, because one of the cruelest weapons of the saboteur is to use your emotional reaction as proof that you are unstable. They tease you, pressure you, undermine your confidence. And when you react, they say, "See, he doesn't know how to deal with pressure." And then you enter a cycle with no way out. He works harder, delivers more, wears himself out more, and continues to lose space, because it's not about what you do, it's about what they make it seem like you are. And by now, you've already understood that the game is different, that the dispute is not for the position, it is for the power of narrative. Whoever controls perception controls destiny. And if you don't know how to see the signs and respond strategically, you'll be erased. He will leave without even knowing why. You will hear that it was lack of alignment, or team adjustment, or culture change. But inside, you'll know they filed you, and they succeeded. Now pay attention, because what comes next will show you exactly how to spot these saboteurs before it's too late. Now you may be wondering, but why? Why would anyone do this to me if I never did anything against them? And that's exactly where the mistake lies, thinking that sabotage needs a just reason, that someone needs to have a history with you, a feud, a fight. The truth is much more uncomfortable. People don't sabotage you because you did something wrong. They sabotage you because you're doing everything right. Envy, fear, insecurity. This is the silent trinity behind most workplace sabotage. It's not about you being bad. It's about you going too far, to be showing up too much, to be growing too much, and growth bothers those who are stagnant. You need to understand one thing. Not everyone wants to improve. Not everyone wants to develop. There are people who have learned to survive by manipulating the system, playing at the edges, using shortcuts. And when someone like you enters the scene, someone who delivers, who thinks, who has presence, that person feels threatened. But she won't say, "I'm afraid of losing my space." She will act. It will create distractions. It will weaken you at the edges where no one notices. And it starts slowly, with small micro-actions. A piece of information that isn't shared with you, a project detail that you only find out about at the end, a parallel conversation. Group that decides what really matters, while you're still in the official group. Gradually, you become the last to know, the first to be questioned, and the easiest to be discarded. And what feeds all this is the most cowardly feeling that exists within a company, the silent comparison. That person who sabotages you is looking at you all the time, not to learn from you, but to find your weak spot. And if she doesn't find any, she makes it up, because for her, her presence is a constant mirror of what she doesn't have the courage to be. You become the living reminder of her stagnation, and this is unbearable. Saboteurs do not attack incompetence. They don't waste energy on those who don't threaten. Saboteurs go after those who can climb, of those who represent a real risk to their mediocrity, because you don't just work better, you bother in silence, just existing. And that's enough. But there's more. There is an even more dangerous type of saboteur, one who convinces himself that he is doing the right thing, the one who believes he is protecting the team, defending the workflow, avoiding conflicts. This is the type who sabotages in the name of a false sense of responsibility. He doesn't see what he does as betrayal. He sees it as correction, like justice, because, in his mind, you are a threat to the order he helped create. And anything that escapes this control needs to be eliminated. This type of person wears the badge, participates in the company's values, attends culture training, but behind the scenes, it operates in shadow mode. All he wants is to preserve his own power, and if he needs to erase you for that, he will do it with the conviction that he is being loyal. Not you, not the team, but his ego. And here comes the worst part, the projection. Because when someone can't stand their own incompetence, they start projecting it onto you. They can't deal with their own frustration, so they convince themselves that the problem is you, that you are arrogant, that you're too competitive, that you don't play in a team. They don't want to understand you, they want to justify you. And the easiest justification is to turn you into a villain. Yes, you read that right. Whoever sabotages you needs to believe that you deserve it. And then they create stories. They sow narratives. They gather loose facts and turn them into evidence. Because if you are difficult, if you are complicated, if you are too ambitious, then sabotage ceases to be unfair and becomes necessary. And this is how emotional lynching is built in the corporate environment. First, they isolate you. Then they label you. And finally, when you are already fragile enough, they discredit you. All this without raising your voice, without signing anything, without leaving a trace. This happens in disorganized startups, in superstructured multinationals, in small agencies, and in public departments. No matter the size of the company, the sabotage policy adapts to any Environment where ego screams louder than competence. Now stop and think, how many times have you felt that you were bothering someone, even for no apparent reason? How many times have you had to recalculate your words, your reactions, your tone of voice, just so as not to feed the wrong perception that someone had already created about you? How many times have you forced yourself to be lighter, less direct, more likable, just to not become a target? And here's where the problem lies. You start to emotionally mutilate yourself to fit into an environment that has already decided that you are awesome. The reality is that many people prefer to live with mediocrity than with excellence, because excellence requires effort, it requires comparison, and no one wants to feel inferior. So instead of climbing with you, they try to pull you in, because it's easier to knock down a talent than to develop one of your own. And do you know what the tragedy of it all is? It's just that no one talks about it openly. Because if you say you're being sabotaged, it sounds like you're creating intrigue. It seems that he is seeing things where there is none. And that's how the system protects itself, by making the victim look guilty. Have you ever been there? Have you ever felt that your evolution has become a silent threat in the environment where you work? That the more you deliver, the more you bother? Comment below if this has ever happened to you. He just writes, "I've felt that." Or, if you prefer, he writes, "They erased me." These two sentences say it all. And if you've been watching this far, you've probably experienced it in some way. And what I'll show you next, it will give you the radar that no one gave you. Because recognizing the saboteur before he acts is the only way to cut the fall before the fall. By now, you may already be starting to remember names of situations from people who now make much more sense. And that's the darkest part of workplace sabotage. It's too subtle to notice at first, but once you see it, you can never unsee it again. But knowing that you are being sabotaged is not enough. You need to know who's doing it and how to take action without getting burned in the process. Because, let's be honest, direct confrontation in toxic corporate environments is not a solution, it is a trap. If you go up without strategy, you deliver exactly what the saboteur wants. A reason to paint you as unstable, aggressive, unbalanced. You need to be smarter than that. It needs to see the enemy without declaring war. And the good news is that they always deliver, always. The saboteur reveals who he is not by words, but by reactions. Want to do a simple test? Start getting recognized, start appearing, give a good idea in a meeting, receive a compliment from a manager. Look at who looks away, who forces a smile, who changes the subject too quickly. The saboteur hates the other's brilliance, especially if it's a brilliance he can't control. The discomfort is visible. It doesn't even have to be direct. Just observe. And there's more. Observe how this person behaves around the leadership. Saboteurs are not just manipulators, they are actors. They change their tone, posture, vocabulary. In front of the boss, they become professional, dedicated, harmless versions. But outside of there, they are cold, critical, competitive. And it's not just the posture that changes, it's the speech. Pay attention to how this person talks about you when the boss is present. If she always corrects her points, if she completes her lines as if she were a reinforcement, or if she constantly tries to soften her value with comments like, "Yes, but he's still learning," or "That was an interesting idea, but the execution still needs polishing." This is not collaboration. It is corporate veneer poisoning. Another powerful strategy: reverse the logic. Instead of observing what they say about you, observe what they feel when you compliment someone. Yes, that's right. Choose a person from the team, praise them publicly, sincerely, and see the reaction of others, especially from that colleague you already suspect. Saboteurs can't stand to see others being validated, especially if it's not them. They need control of the narrative. When you take it away from them, even for a few seconds, they reveal themselves. A look of contempt, an uncomfortable silence, a sudden change of subject. All of this is a clue. Saboteurs also have an almost pathological tendency to minimize others. They do it in a subtle way, as if they just want to help. They say you're going too fast, that you're trying too hard, that you should leave some to the team too. But behind this is the real intention, to slow you down, make you question your own surrender, because the more you deliver, the more threat you pose. And the more you question yourself, the easier you are to manipulate. Another classic behavior. They position themselves as intermediaries. They always know more than they say. They are always in 2 or 3 parallel conversations. They always have a broader vision than the others. If you notice that this person always seems to be in the right place, with the right information, and yet never shares what really matters with you, you can be sure this is no coincidence. It's control, it's strategy. And don't be fooled by passive behavior. Many saboteurs hide behind the image of the good guy, of the helper, the one who always seems available, always polite, always interested. But the polite saboteur is the most dangerous of all, because no one suspects him. While the arrogant one draws attention, the sympathetic one collects data. While the right is burned, the smiling one advances. And before you know it, you've been left behind, without even being directly attacked. Want another brutally effective tip? Analyze the pattern of negative coincidences. With each mistake of yours that reaches the G and boss's ear, ask yourself mentally, who knew that? For each poorly explained problem, ask, who had access? With each failure interpreted in a distorted way, think, who could have presented it that way? Saboteurs don't like to expose themselves. They use shortcuts. They let other people speak for them. They do the minimum to appear neutral, but enough to plant the necessary distrust. And the more you ignore these signs, the more comfortable they become. Now, if you want something more direct, try this strategic move. Create an environment where the saboteur feels safe enough to reveal himself. Ask open-ended questions, demonstrate calculated vulnerability, and see how he reacts. Something like, do you also feel that some decisions here are weird? Or have you ever been left out of something important? Saboteurs love it when they think they're gaining your trust. And at this point, it is common for them to blurt out camouflaged criticism of other colleagues, or even about you, thinking that you will agree. This is the loophole, and you need to be attentive and finally, most importantly, document everything. Not as someone who lives in paranoia, but as someone who understands that in the reputation game, evidence is worth more than words. Save emails, write down key conversations, record ambiguous interactions. You don't have to expose anything right now, but you'll be thankful for having evidence when you need to protect yourself from a manipulated narrative. Now, I want to know from you. Have you ever identified someone like this in your work? Someone who acts smiling but hurts in the back? Someone who always seems to be one step ahead but never pulls you along? Comment below. If you want to be direct, you write, I've seen that game. Or if he prefers to be discreet, he just comments, the observer sees first. These phrases already say a lot and show that you are seeing beyond what they want you to see. Because now that you've learned to recognize the signs, you're closer than ever to doing what few can. Neutralize the saboteur before he erases you, and the next step you'll find out now. Now that you've learned how to spot saboteurs without getting dirty, you might be wondering, okay, now what? What do I do with it? Because yes, recognizing the game is essential, but knowing how to play without betraying your own principles is the real differential. And this is exactly where the first real step comes in for you to turn this game around, building an unbeatable reputation. Not a reputation for being the coolest, the nicest, the hardest working. Not at all. I'm talking about a strategic reputation. A reputation that protects you even when you're not there. Because in the corporate environment, what keeps you alive isn't what you say about yourself. It's what people say about you when you leave the room. And this reputation is not built on great acts. It is forged in consistency, positioning, and intelligence. And the first pillar of this is Clarity. If you want to survive in an environment where there is sabotage, gossip, manipulation, and influence play, you need to learn to make everything clear. Everything. Clarity about what you deliver. Clarity about what you believe. Clarity about your limit. Because where there is ambiguity, saboteurs create narratives. If your work is good, but no one knows exactly what you did, someone will fill that void, and it will not always be in your favor. So document. And here I'm not just talking about saving emails, I'm talking about something more subtle. Create traces, send updates, write summaries of your projects, record your insights. Don't wait for them to ask you. Don't expect them to recognize you. Become undeniable. Saboteurs thrive on doubt. Doubt is their weapon. They love it when the boss says, "I'm not sure who did it," because it is in this space that they take their place. You need to eliminate this space. The second pillar is strategic. Relationship. Don't confuse this with sucking up. I'm talking about creating valuable connections with those who really matter. People who have a voice, people who have influence, people who may at some point say, "Calm down, this doesn't match what I know about him." Because if you isolate yourself, if you believe that just working well is enough, you become the perfect target, not because it is weak, but because it's lonely. Build bridges. Build presence. Be someone that people miss when you don't show up, someone that others defend without you asking. This is not done with flattery, it is done with posture, with delivery, with an ethical position, with emotional intelligence. And if someone tries to distort your image, you will hit a wall, because your reputation won't allow the poison to spread. And that, I assure you, is the biggest nightmare of any saboteur. Not being able to stick a narrative on you. But this requires you to understand an uncomfortable truth. You can't want to be loved by everyone. And this is especially true in toxic environments. Trying to please everyone is an invitation to be manipulated. Your priority is to be respected, not accepted. And when you build that solid foundation, something changes. You start to realize that you no longer have to defend yourself all the time, because what you are, what you represent, already protects you. And even if they try to erase you, the marks you left are still there. The deliveries, the positioning, the coherence, they speak for you, and they speak loudly. This is where you turn the tables without playing dirty, because you don't go down to their level. You move up to the level they can't reach. And that's what annoys those who sabotage you the most. The fact that you keep growing, to continue to be seen, to continue to be recognized, even without getting into the intrigues. Because the truth is that those who live by sabotage are always reacting. And you, when you build that unbeatable reputation, you start to act, driving, to influence. Now pay attention. You no longer have to walking on eggshells. You no longer need to be silent so as not to appear sensitive, nor hide so as not to outshine anyone. You can, yes, shine, as long as you know how to sustain that brightness with intelligence. So, if you've made it this far, I'm going to ask you 3 things, simple but powerful. First, subscribe to the channel now. If this video brought you clarity, if at any time you felt described here, if you felt that someone finally put into words what you experienced in silence, you need to be here with us. Because this is not an isolated video. It's a series of content to shield you emotionally and professionally, and you won't want to be left out. Second, leave the like now. Yes, now. He doesn't wait for the end to pass. Because if you're here, it's because it touched you in some way. And this simple gesture helps this video to reach more people who are also feeling alone at work, being sabotaged and not understanding why. And third, but most important, comment below. He comments on the phrase, "Now I play right," because this phrase represents everything you have learned here. It represents that you understood that you don't need to get dirty to protect yourself, that there is another way, a smarter path, more strategic, more powerful. And before leaving, do this. The video that is appearing here on the side will show you the 7 phrases you should never say. At work, if you want to avoid being the target of sabotage, it is the natural continuation of what we have talked about here. Click now, watch this next video, and shield your professional journey once and for all. I'll wait for you there, because those who play right never play alone.